Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we turn to talking about another all-female movie coming from Hollywood that's inevitably getting woke as expected. Charlie's Angels has a reboot coming out later this year, and when I saw the trailer that came out earlier this week, I wasn't too impressed to say the least. Not only does the new project look boring and like a shadow of its former self, but also it's undoubtedly getting woke as hell, and probably social justice warrior influenced as well. The movie's obviously not out yet, but you can already tell a lot from the trailer and cast alone. For example, 2 of the 3 main characters have already been brownwashed, meaning they were formerly white characters that are now being played by black or brown actors. Now, at face value, I actually don't have a problem with so-called race-bending characters like this in movies. Sometimes the best actor for the job isn't the exact same race or background that the original source material describes, and they are playing a character after all. This is acting, so it's not like this can't work or happen or be great even. For example, when Samuel L. Jackson was cast as Nick Fury for the Avengers and Marvel movies, no one really batted an eye about him not being white, like how the character was and is in the comics. In fact, many SJW types will encourage this kind of black or brown washing in casting, while at the same time, they unironically condemn this if it goes the other way around. If a white person takes a role that was formerly another race, well, leftists in our world will totally freak out, like how they did with another character from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Check out this article about Doctor Strange, the movie from 2016, and this is when SJWs were freaking out when Tilda Swinton, a white woman, ended up playing the Ancient One, and they were crying because this was so-called whitewashing, because of course the original character was Asian. So I think you guys get the point. No one's writing brownwashing or blackwashing or even girl-washing articles out there. They're only attacking it and hating on it if it's whitewashing, which really says a lot. So now, when I see them forcing in minorities to movies like Charlie's Angels just cuz, like what's going on with this movie, well, I just cringe hardcore. And admittedly, I start to get a little defensive too. I think these idiots deserve to get pushed back here because they do so much pushing in the anti-white direction. So someone's got to stand up for us, and that's why I'm making this video today. Just look at this picture of the new cast of Charlie's Angels for another minute. And it may not seem like much or a big deal here, but when you consider this is a reboot of a movie from 2000 that was also a reboot of the TV show from the 1970s, and well, when you factor in the way they got to here, well, it's all too obvious. For those who don't know, a little recap, for those who aren't familiar with the original TV series, Charlie's Angels started off as a television show in the 1970s. It starred 3 very sexy and empowered girls who played private detectives solving crimes, all for their faceless leader named Charlie, of course, who would anonymously give them directions via a speakerphone. And there's one other main character here too, named Bosley. He was the other white guy who acted as the go-between, the mentor type person who occasionally helped the girls on missions as well. Now this setup stayed pretty much the same when the series was first rebooted in 2000, making just one notable change. Back then, the girls were played by Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu, with Bill Murray playing Bosley as well. This of course was an all-star cast, and it still is, and they all worked extremely well together in those movies. The first being in 2000 and a sequel being called Charlie's Angels Full Throttle in 2003. But you probably noticed that instead of having 3 white girls like the TV show, one was made an Asian with the casting of Lucy Liu in 2000. And no one would dare complain about this either since, you know, Lucy Liu is sexy as hell, an amazing actress, and a stunning and talented performer. She's got all the right moves for this kind of action-packed, stunt-driven picture too, so she was definitely a perfect fit for the cast. And this so-called race-bending of that character was welcomed by all. Next, let's turn back to the cast for the new 2019 movie, who is much less impressive looking, all things considered. I've hardly heard of any of these girls really. Definitely not in the same high-profile, well-liked way from the last movies at all. The only truly famous one here is Kristen Stewart, and I would say she kind of was famous during her rise in the Twilight movies years ago, but now she's kind of washed up and almost forgotten about, and it looks like this is her way of making a comeback of sorts here. And right off the bat, I also don't like Kristen Stewart's pixie haircut in this movie at all. Looks like they're trying to make her look like a lesbian or something, to make her more inclusive and pro-LGBTQ pride or some shit. And that's not even mentioning the fact that, let's face it, Kristen Stewart isn't very attractive. She's okay, and I've seen her be hot in some specific situations, but overall, this is definitely a big step down in the looks department, especially considering the previous versions of this series have all been super hotties. Clearly, the new Charlie's Angels is dropping its whole having sexy chicks pull off detective work angle, and they're opting to have this lesbian chick and her minority friends take over for no reason at all. Well, there kinda is a reason. It's stupid, but it's there. The reason is SJWs have clearly taken over here, and they've made this shit progressive and diverse as hell. Next, let's talk about the other 2 angels here, the 2 out of 3 that are now brown for no good reason. reason. Like I said before, race bending can be fine if it's done for a good reason. If the story changes or the actor is better or something, that's great, go with it. And that's why no one complained when Lucy Liu was added into the last movies. She was already famous, well-respected, sexy, and well-liked, and she was a welcome addition to the cast. These new girls in the new Charlie's Angels reboot, they aren't the same case at all. I mean, they are certainly prettier than Kristen Stewart, but that's not saying much. I could probably be prettier than Kristen Stewart if I just did my hair and makeup right. I will admit though, the girl on the left here, Naomi Scott, she is sexy as hell. She's the real hottie here, and she's certainly an up-and-coming actress too, having just played Princess Jasmine in the Aladdin reboot earlier this summer. But with that said, Naomi Scott clearly is not world famous yet, and she doesn't have the name recognition, not to mention, I've never noticed her acting being anything special either. She's serviceable and not bad, but it's also not something I see and say, hey, she's so good she has to be in this or something. And finally, the third girl, the third angel here, is some random black chick that no one's ever heard of. Sure, she seems pretty and could be fine and dandy, but putting all this together and this project is looking lackluster to say the least. Brownwashing two of the three girls and then making the one white girl, the lead one, ugly and with problematic hair? Well, that certainly isn't a good start here. Next, let's talk about the fourth main character in the series called Bosley, who has now been girl washed and is being played by Elizabeth Banks, who is also the director for this movie too. And way to put yourself in there, girl, but I highly doubt you'll be able to live up to the previous Bosley played by Bill frickin' Murray, another legendary actor. And basically, this whole cast, they all don't live up to any of the previous ones at all. It's a letdown. Not only is it brown and girl washing this shit for no reason, other than trying to look woke, but also, they're all not the stars and high caliber performers this series deserves. They could have done so much better, and it could have been an awesome movie if they tried hard, with a different cast. For example, here's another potential casting that I think would have been 100 times better than this. Here's Anne Hathaway, Margot Robbie, and Jessica Chastain. Looking good. These are three very sexy actresses who are also on top of their game in the industry. They're world-renowned and mostly household names for the most part. And this is a cast that Charlie's Angels would deserve, and something I would have loved to see. And it could have been comparable to the 2000 movies cast, which also featured very famous hot chicks like this, who were on top of their games at the time too. But as we've seen with this new movie, they've opted to cast ugly has-beens and nobodies. And they're brown and girl washing everything in an effort to appease SJWs, who won't even go see their movie in the first place. Let's face it, these movies are made for dudes, and Charlie's Angels fans have always been guys. So the 2019 reboot trying to do this empowering girl power type story, well, it just might not work for them. Even though Charlie's Angels was one of the original projects to do this kind of girl power thing in the 1970s. But back then and in 2000, they did it the right way. They had chicks who were empowered, and they were also sexy and appealing too, especially to this male-dominated audience I mentioned before. But now in 2019, well, having hot chicks and high-profile celebrities isn't very cool anymore, and we're not allowed to have fun and watch hotties do detective work like this, so that's what's brought us here today. Next, let's move on from talking about the casting and talk about the title and the reboot aspect of this. Specifically, how this really feels like one of those recent lady reboots we hated, like Ghostbusters 2016 or Ocean's 8, or the upcoming all-girl Terminator. But Charlie's Angels and Terminator, for that matter, they aren't as offensive to the source material since they've featured prominent female characters since the beginning, unlike the others. And perhaps in a way, you could say modern lady reboots are being influenced by these previous female-driven projects like Charlie's Angels and also the Alien and Terminator franchises. They all did the girl power shit when it was still new, and it was still being done well too. And now, later projects trying to go all-female, well, they simply pale in comparison. And I think although the new 2019 Charlie's Angels shares the same name with the classic ones, well, it still reminds me more of these modern lady reboot flops. It feels more like that over actually feeling like it's going to be cool and fun like the originals. First, we got this forced diversity, and then there's more and more girl washing too. And finally, SJW politics inevitably make it into these new reboots too, and it really goes all downhill from there. Not to mention, sometimes they are horribly unfunny, like Ghostbusters 2016, and I could see Charlie's Angels 2019 going that route too, since this series has been known to be very comedic as well, in addition to the action and adventure stuff. Although Elizabeth Banks did previously pull off a girl comedy before when she directed Pitch Perfect 2, but that was 4 years ago, and I wouldn't say she's immune to messing this up either. That reminds me of another thing I hate about all these reboots recently. Did you notice how we eventually have to start calling them by the years they came out instead of the title? Well, that's because half the reboots and sequels coming out these days have the same titles as the originals. This has been going on for years, but the recent wave started a few years back when Total Recall from 1990 had a reboot made in 2012 that was shitty and no one watched. Then RoboCop from 1987, it got itself a reboot in 2014, which was also really bad too. Moving forward, Ghostbusters from 1984 got a lady reboot in 2016, and in 2017, the Stephen King novel It was remade into a movie, which also had a TV series made about it before that in the 90s. And now, just in this last year, we've got a ton of other examples like The Predator, Hellboy, and Child's Play, which all had same-named reboots and sequels come out. Not to mention, Disney has 3 live-action reboots with the same names as the originals coming out this year alone. Dumbo, Aladdin, and The Lion King, which is coming out soon. And this is only scratching the surface of this recent wave of same-name reboots and sequels. That's getting annoying. There have been many more movies like this though, like the reboot series of The Planet of the Apes, which was also rebooted another time in 2001. And also, there's the Shaft movie, which just came out this week. And that's a same-name sequel to the 2000 Shaft, which was itself a reboot of the Shaft movie from 1971. Wow, Jesus, this is getting out of hand, and I'm only getting started. Also, video games have been doing this same-name stuff a ton recently too. The Doom game came out with the same-name reboot in 2016, and before that, Tomb Raider had a same-name reboot in 2013, and that's just the video game one. Now that I think of that series, the movies based off the video game Tomb Raider, well, they just had a same-name reboot in 2018 as well. So, wow, I think you guys are starting to get the point now. This same-name reboot and sequel stuff is getting out of hand. Not only is it requiring too much confusing labeling and noting of the years every time you try to mention them in order to keep it in order, but also, it's just the filmmakers being lazy and boring and trying to cash in. Now, I understand the whole name recognition thing works a lot of the time, but at least call this new Charlie's Angels movie something with a subtitle, like how the last Alien movie was Alien: Covenant. Calling this Charlie Angels reboot something like Charlie's Angels: The New Class or some shit, that would be cool. And shit, that reminds me of X-Men: The First Class, which was itself a pretty good reboot that did the title right too. Classy, better thought out, and well-made movies at least do something like this with the title, but the new Charlie's Angels is choosing to go with the lazy, same-name reboot shit, and that really says a lot. In the end, I would say people are sick of same-name reboots for starters, and on top of that, we hate forced diversity and girl power bullshit. Granted, Charlie's Angels has an advantage here because they've been girl-powered from the start, but needless to say, many don't like what we've seen from this so far. Not only does this new trailer and movie look boring, the cast is also unimpressive, and combine that with the hypocritical brown and girl washing of everything, and clearly Charlie's Angels is getting woke now. Just how bad the movie will turn out has yet to be seen, but we could certainly say this is not a great start. What do you guys think? Is Charlie's Angels getting woke? Do you like the casting of Kristen Stewart and 2 other virtual nobodies? Will you watch a movie like this when it comes out? Because I'd rather just watch the 2000 and 2003 Charlie's Angels movies with the hot and fun cast that we actually like. Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.